Welcome everyone to Above the Fold episode 8. We got a special episode. It's going to be all Jeff Baker all the time. He was at Content Marketing World last week in Cleveland. I want to know what he learned, who did he meet, what did he eat out there. Curious about all sorts of things. It's a little different for us this episode. We're only going to be talking about this one conference. We are still going to have our 4 kind of like topics we're going to focus on. The words for those topics are snackable, long form, original, and podcast. You can probably guess what we're all focusing on with all those, but it helps us keep organized, which Jeff and I sadly need. As always, you got Jeff Baker, our AVP of Creative Marketing here at Brafton, and me, Francis Ma, VP of Creative for the production side of things. Here to talk all things about content marketing, and today in particular about Content Marketing World.
You don't even know our titles, do you? There was so much struggle.
I struggled a little bit.
Yeah, you struggled a lot.
Because I was talking through just words and like the letters of it is AVP, isn't it?
It's
AVP.
It is AVP of marketing. Yeah, that's
yeah. Well, I guess I added creative marketing in there, but I don't know why I put creative in your title. That was a mistake.
I'm not creative.
Whatever. That was a mistake. It's out there. Oh, I absolutely know that. Now everyone else does. But you know what? Even the dog gets a warm part of the sunshine every once in a while.
Yeah, even a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then.
you can have creative. Before we jump into all the topics, though, the one thing I want to know is just basic general stuff, man. What was this experience like? I've never been to a conference like this before. I've never been to a content marketing specific conference, and what I want to know is, what is it like walking into one of these things? Is it like a Comic-Con? Is it like a rock show? Are people screaming? Are there like awkward corners somewhere that you kind of know to avoid? How similar to high school was this, I guess is what I'm getting at. Completely
unlike anything that I expected. So I got there right as the keynote was starting, and if you we referenced Silicon Valley previously. And
yes, yeah, the show on HBO.
The show on HBO. Do you remember any of the episodes where, what's the bad guy's name? The bad guy that runs Hulu, and it's basically
yeah.
Whenever he comes out on stage, it turns into a giant rock show where the lights are going, pandemonium. Yeah, there's trumpets playing and there's fog lights and Hans Zimmer is playing the score in the background. It's exactly what it was like, and. So Joe Polizzi comes out there, and this was his grand reemergence onto the scene because he took a sabbatical from CMI, and he returned in this.
I think you gotta explain Joe a little bit for some people who might not know Joe.
Joe started CMI, Content Marketing Institute, which basically they started out as a consultancy company. And they changed themselves, they rebranded themselves as a resource center, basically the premier resource center for all things content marketing. And if you search just about anything plus content marketing in Google, they're going to pop up in the first 5 results. They've written tons of content. They are the authorities in the space. And Joe ran this company until he took a sabbatical. It was almost, I don't even know if he may have quit. I don't know. But the point is, he came back and he started this big conference called CMWorld years ago. And he came back to it in this event that I was at. And there was lasers shooting all over the place. There was fog machines. He came out in this blood orange vest and pants. And where do you find orange dress shoes, Francis? He was wearing orange dress shoes. So it was,
that's amazing.
To answer your question, I was kind of like, this is just so odd, because it kind of felt like a cult and everyone's just going crazy. Like, people screaming at a Rolling Stones concert in the 60s.
Yeah.
The motivational speaking, all that's every cliche you can think of was happening. And it sucked me in, man. I was 100% head over heels into it.
I mean, I want this. I want to experience this because I feel like it's just in a whole other world. And to hear that it's exactly like the scenes from Silicon Valley just makes me want to go into the next one somehow. Like it sounds crazy, and I just want to see it in person.
And it was unexpected too, because this is my first time in Cleveland, Ohio. It was hot. It was sticky. The area that I was in was very weird. And I walked into this laser show with fog machines and content marketers from either coast that just converged in middle of nowhere. Cleveland, but it's kind of the middle of nowhere. And it was very odd. And then I kind of expected that it was going to be, you associate these things with networking, right? Like you expect that you're going to have to go out there and socialize with people. And it is really not that. It was, you sign up for these sessions and you plan out your day and you're hauling ass from one session to another, just like you mentioned high school. You're doing that. Yeah. You're taking notes for 45 minutes and you're hauling ass to the next session. So it's next session, so you can get a decent seat and you can actually see and hear the people they're going to be speaking. And that was lined up back to back to back to back, like 7-8 sessions per day, including like grabbing a hoagie and stuffing it down your face in between. You're like running and eating and there's tomatoes flying all over the place and people tripping over each other. And it wasn't what I expected at all.
It sounds like a professional riot, or kind of like, the running of the bulls, only like, with marketing. I don't know. Again, I want to be there, man. I want to be able to jump into this pit and just kind of see if I can survive. It
was a very organized riot amongst unathletic tech people. That's the best way to
I've always said that one of my favorite things taking the subway to work is watching people run who don't normally run. Like, they've suddenly discovered, oh no, I got to get over there in like half the time of walking, and I have to try this running thing I've read about. How do you do this? I love it. I absolutely love it. I shouldn't love it as much as I do. Part of me kind of wants to see someone stumble a little bit, not full on like flat out yard sale kind of thing, but just like stumble enough to be like, I'm still trying to figure out running. I love it.
It's kind of like a baby deer that's just discovering walking for the first time.
It's exactly what that's like.
It's almost like one leg is a little too long for the other, and they're just still kind of getting their shaky legs under them.
I haven't gotten to the point where I'm videotaping it on my phone. I feel like that's somewhat rude, but like I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. For one last thing before we move on to the topics. For those who maybe don't know, Joe, who Jeff was referencing, also had a podcast called This Old Marketing Podcast, which I loved. And it went off, I guess, the air, or had its finale last year in December, maybe early Jan. I don't remember. But a lot of what I've taken, is that when he took his sabbatical? A lot of what I take, about audience, about brand positioning, about understanding how to engage, a lot of it came from that podcast. So Joe, if you're listening, because maybe someone told you about this podcast, or maybe they didn't, heartfelt thanks. Many years of listening to you, and just thanks all around. Let's move on to our first topic, and this is and Jeff, we're not doing the downloadable ones today. We're not doing the 20-second download. Our loyal listeners will know we do that. For this one, we're not. We're just going to have a conversation, and we're just going to talk about content marketing world. We may absolutely fail at this. We actually haven't done anything without a 20-second download, so we'll see how this feels. But Jeff, the first thing we're going to talk about is snackable content sucks. I saw this in your notes. I'm also a little hungry now, just mentioning snackable, but what does this mean? Why does snackable content suck? It feels like it shouldn't, because it's snackable, and I associate that with a positive thing. Why am I wrong?
Very, very simple. So if I were to hold out two hands, one hand has a snack, say Cheez-Its. I've got a little bag of bite-sized Cheez-Its in one hand.
I want the Cheez-Its. I want it in my mouth right now. I want it.
Okay.
Yes.
In the other hand, I have a filet mignon aged for 12 days. Which one do you want?
Is the filet, I have questions. First of all, is the steak cooked? Is it just, are you just holding in Chicago, they show you the meat before they cook it. I wonder if it's that kind of thing. Are you doing that? Because if you're doing that, I want the Cheez-Its, man. I don't want to.
Clearly, clearly missed the bell on this one.
No.
Okay.
I told you I was hungry. I was going to focus on the food. I know the answer. I want the filet mignon because it's better. It smells fantastic, and there's the quality is better for me.
Okay. Well, the point of this is a snack it's going to satiate you for a minute. You're going to get your dopamines firing as you're snacking down on said Cheez-Its out of my hand like an animal. And on the other hand, you eat a meal that's unforgettable. You've probably got, Francis, do you have 3 meals in your life that you absolutely remember for just crushing your heart and making you cry?
Yeah, I absolutely do.
Everybody does. You remember that moment. You remember where you were. You sure as hell remember the restaurant that served it to you. That is good long form content. So the guy's name is Andrew Davis. You heard him before?
I have not, no.
Okay. He came on stage with a mystery box. That's what it said on the side. It said, mystery box. He dragged that out there and he said, you guys aren't ready for this yet. And we weren't. So he went through this presentation where he basically said that we do not do a good job of building anticipation with content. And he just really started picking on testimonial videos, where you go into a testimonial video and they immediately give away the lead. They give away the goods in 5 seconds. Hey, this company did XYZ for me. You didn't build up a case for it. You didn't build up a problem. You didn't add any character around the protagonist. You didn't create a climax, and you didn't create a conclusion. So what he's saying is basically you need to think in terms of a movie director. What you really need to do is you need to think about reality shows and how they create this goal at the very beginning. You get a little bit of a rapport with your protagonist, and then they spend 40 minutes trying to destroy the goal as much as possible. So think of like ice road truckers. You spend 40 minutes watching them almost fall into the ice. And you're like, oh my God, is it going to fall into the ice? And then at the end, they show they didn't fall into the ice. Or bar rescue is another one that we talk about. So you know what's going to happen. John Taffer's going to come in. He's going to start screaming at people for half an hour. You're going to laugh and chuckle and be grateful that it's not you getting screamed at by this middle-aged balding man. And
with his eyes bulging out of his skull. I mean, that image alone just burns in your brain.
Yeah. And at the end, they say, all right, turn around and see your bar. And then cuts to commercial break. And you are absolutely hanging around for those last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's what he says you need to be doing with content. Let me get back to the mystery box. He gave somebody the mystery box in the audience. He found somebody that's doing a really good job on Twitter. He scoured Twitter and found somebody that's providing awesome content. He said, you're getting this mystery box. I'm not going to tell you. And he kept walking up to it and pulling out like a couple tissues from the top. And then he's like, no, I'm going to go back and talk about my presentation a little bit. So you had to wait to find out what was in that damn mystery box for 50 minutes. And then by the end, he opens it up and anything could be in these things. Like it was a bunch of board games. It's like Parcheesi and Sorry and Clue. And I didn't care. I just needed to know what was in the box. It didn't even matter what was in it at the end. It was just a bunch of board games.
Wow.
Yeah. So the idea is to apply that to content and really build up that anticipation. Like give somebody a good story and make them want to hang around for the end.
So I'm going to take, and this is going to be odd for me, the client's perspective right now, because I've definitely had the conversations, and in particular with testimonial, either call it video or blogs or content, how it's not about a story, how it's not about characters. They just want to say, no, we have to talk about us. We have to get our service or our product out there front and center because that's the thing. This thing has to sell. We need to be able to push the needle on this, get more leads, get more people at the top of the sales funnel. Everything you just talked about kind of runs counter to that. We don't even talk about anything. We treat it like a very, dramatized sort of thing where there is anticipation. There's this box or there's this somewhat solution. And is it going to happen? There are these other characters that pop up. There's a hiccup or there's a speed bump. And will they be able to kind of go beyond that? I'm all for this, but I'm wondering, how do you go from a client's perspective that I just kind of described to getting them to understand about doing this in a creative and more like storytelling kind of way?
We'll send it out in the show notes. And he did this from one testimonial video that was absolutely terrible, and all he did was re-edit it. So he edited the order in which things were presented. He cut off areas that were really, really boring, added some different music that wasn't just, all cheery, lame, stock sounding testimonial stock music that everybody's familiar with, and rebuilt the video so that it almost felt like you were on the edge of your seat learning about tax software. It was tax software.
Okay. Did it work? I mean, did you get that same experience of like, I want to know what's inside that box?
I mean, it wasn't John Taffer, but yeah, it kept me. As much as a testimonial video about tax software can keep me hanging around, it did a good job. Yeah, and I can't tell you much about the edit. Yeah, that's not my area. I don't know what I'm doing, we can send it out in the show notes and people can take a look at it.
So follow up. We get the client to agree. Client does all this. We re-edit the video, and it's got the anticipation. It's got the payoff toward the end. Now I'm the client again, and I'm saying, great, people know what's inside the box now. How does that actually get people to buy it? Because you just said you didn't even care what was in the box anymore. You just need to know what was in it. So does that still lead to leads? Does that push the needle up? Does that give me my marketing goal as a client?
Well, you'll know because they actually watched it. So if you give somebody a video that sucks, they're going to watch 5 seconds of it and say, this is just a big dripping cheese sandwich. I like a good grilled cheese sandwich, but not
not one that drips all over the place.
Not a Velveeta cheese sandwich. Let's keep it within reason. Or if you give them something that's super entertaining and they watch it all the way through and say, okay, 2 things happened here. One, I'm convinced on their proof of concept, they can do what they say that they're going to do based on this interview. And 2, they've got creative chops. I mean, they created a video that grabbed me through the entirety, and I'm sold on their creativity too.
Fair enough. And you know what? Even if someone outside their industry, like you just said, tax software, you're not doing tax software, but you now know about this video. If you happen to be networking or meet someone in that industry, you can say, oh, you know what? I saw this one crazy video. You guys should check it out. That at least gets it out there even more. Talking about, awareness and engagement. Suddenly it's people not even in that industry of tax software flagging it and being like, hey, you should check this out.
People aren't in the business of tax software. They're in the business of being entertained. So if you can entertain them and incorporate something to do with your product as like a secondary, as almost like a tangential goal, then I think that's where the actual content that gets shared ends up. I mean, talk about the Dollar Shave Club. That was entertaining first. It was entertaining first, and then it was a sales piece second. And I think that order matters.
I think you're right. I think it also matters that the industry they somewhat disrupted hadn't been like disrupted in decades. I mean, cheap razors and, having it show up at the house at that time was somewhat novel. And I think they had that going forward too.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah. I mean, we haven't seen anything other than 18 razor blades with a shoulder strap and a kickstand coming out. 18, you need 19. You need a smooth.
Right. Oh my goodness. The 19 one, that's going to get that, I get it. It's another blade. So the other one, long form content. Again, from your notes, why do people like long form content? Why does it perform so well? What is it about long form content that engages people? I mean, this kind of goes back a little bit to the snackable thing, but what is it about long form content? Why is it so special? Why is it the most attractive person at the bar that we want to talk to?
Well, I think we got to be a little bit more specific about what long form content means. So when we say long form content, we don't just mean super long blog posts. I'm not going to sit here and read a 3,000 word piece of junk. I'm going to read a 3,000 word piece of content that's really, really, really good. And that was the whole point of this conversation. It was hosted by Mitch Joel, Dorie Clark, and Handley, she got the, I think, Content Marketing Hall of Fame award that was handed out to her.
There's a Content Marketing Hall of Fame?
Yeah. I didn't see you in the hallway either. So unfortunately,
I get it.
They haven't recognized your brilliance. Yeah.
So many questions, man. Are there plaques? Are there like statues? Is there an explanation about why they're in the Hall of Fame? Is there an induction ceremony? I need to know all of that like now.
Actually, they just name an adopted turtle after you, like a rescue turtle. So everybody gets there, which is also pretty cool too. I mean, be good for you. Like Francis Ma, Content Marketing Hall of Fame, also a turtle. No, I don't know. I don't know what you get. I'm assuming. Oh my goodness! Like, get like a cheap watch. We'll have to ask Ann.
I'm half distracted now because I'm now Googling Content Marketing Hall of Fame inductees. But continue on. I'm listening. Somewhat.
So the point is the point of the conversation that they were having is along the same lines. Is that snackable content sucks. Twitter, just thinking that you're going to write a tweet that's going to take over the world. It's just not. What's going to be memorable is good long form content that's really well researched. And like I said, it's not a really long blog post for the sake of being a long blog post. It's something that's truly insightful and usually including some sort of your own original research that you found somewhere, like something that nobody has reported on before, taking a stance that nobody's talked about, finding data that nobody's talked about, and weaving it into a really good story is what they defined as long form content. So it's not just writing for the sake of writing, And a couple examples here. Like people think that to be top of the funnel, you have to create very short content. Like you have to create these snackable content, which is probably the most disgusting buzzword that's in the market today. They think that they have to create these new tricks and these new, short videos and audio bites and all this kind of gimmicky stuff when you really don't have to do that. Like when it comes down to it, you just have to create really good content. And it can work at the top of the funnel. Like, look at Joe Rogan podcast, 3 hours long. And people listen to that. Thousands of people listen to that every single month. Look at, have you ever read Wait But Why before?
No.
Awesome website. He does think pieces about, like, he did a piece on AI. It took me 90 minutes to finish the blog post. It was a monster. And I did not stop for 1 second. I didn't even go to the restroom. Was sitting there on a beach ball, just reading this post. It was so good. And this was the first piece of content I ever read from the guy. So why can't long form content be top of funnel stuff? I think it's a myth that needs to get busted. Because if you think about it, like how many pieces of long form content did you consume as like their very first piece that introduced you to a brand?
I mean, I can't believe I'm taking this stance again, but like, again, if I'm a client, how is this cost effective? The first thing I hear, and I know this because, in being in creative, long form content, original research, this is going to take time. It takes time, takes energy. You're talking about a 3,000 word, AI piece. I know that's not done in 3 hours. That's probably at least 3 weeks, probably 2 months, doing research, talking to people and so on. If I'm a client, how does this cost effective for me? How do I make that work?
Well, let me give you an example. That I'm just counting right now. So that example I used, Wait But Why? Yeah. He has written, it looks like about 50 blog posts in total. And last month he got 2.8 million unique visitors. And before that, it was more than that. It's off of about 50 blog posts. Yeah. So he wrote is a very, very simple combination of things. He wrote really awesome long form content in a way that nobody had written about it before. He created this, it looks like a free newsletter pop-up. So he's got thousands and thousands of subscribers and it got shared. It got shared like crazy. So now he gets millions and millions of visitors. So it's really simple. You work hard and you create really good content and you get people to subscribe to your newsletter.
And you write about something like AI, which, everyone is into. In terms of topics, that's one of the trending, we want to know more about AI. I mean, what if he wrote about garden hoses? And he spent, I'm going way off in the other deep end here, but I think what I'm saying is that the subject matter matters here. Like he's writing about AI. Everyone's interested in AI. You and I are always interested in this stuff. We're not going to read a 1,000-word piece on garden hoses.
That's a fair point. I mean, garden hoses aside. So if we're talking about the practical listener here that's looking to improve content for their brand, and not all brands are as sexy as AI, and they're not SpaceX or anything like that. However, I mean, I think it comes down to really writing content what this comes down to is writing content that your audience wants to hear. It's not filler stuff. It's writing really, really in-depth stuff. So if your audience is like, all right, garden hoses, so you've got professional, you've got gardeners, you've got landscapers, architects, perhaps, I don't know. Find out what the hell they want to learn about and write really, really good pieces that encompass every question that they would ever want to know about garden hoses. What types are there? What is the history of the garden hose? Like, what's the best garden hose that is going to look good on an art decor house, right?
No, you're right. Absolutely. I mean, if those are my words, right back at me. You know, what does your audience want? How do you engage them and answer those questions? You're right. You're right. It can be done. It does go back into like time and money and all that. And I would love, you know, a blank check and be like, you know, what is the best way to attack this? And I think, and maybe this is for another show, but how do you work within a budget? How do you get this, you know, long form content, original research and everything? And how do you fit it in? You know, how do you get it in there for something that someone or business that's trying to make that extra step? But there is a budget. We're all beholden by a budget. How creative can you get? I think these are the questions swirling in my mind. I mean, if I had all the time and money in the world, this sounds fantastic, everything you just said. I want to jump in, you know. I'll write that 3,000
jump
piece
in,
garden
Francis.
hose.
both feet. Grab your garden hose and jump in, buddy.
All right, good segue into the third thing, which you're kind of touching upon anyway, you know, with the third topic of original research. You know, we talk a lot in creative and in editorial. It's called sourcing. You know, where's the information coming from? Where's the data coming from? And you're mentioning something about original research, which ties back to that article, you know, you wrote a couple weeks ago. You dived into it. You had hours of data to kind of pull through, and you wrote this long ass article. I think it was like 3,000 words of what you found. It's a great example of what this is, but I guess, you know, what did they say about original research? How does this work? How can this be applied?
Yeah, that's something that we do. Our creative marketing team, we're responsible for inbound leads, but also it kind of doubles as a testing ground so that we can try new techniques and we can gather original research. And I do this specifically because it helps us in a couple ways, and it can help any company in a couple ways. First of which is most of the research that I'm doing is going to be used somehow on our team. Like, for example, that piece that I did on keyword difficulty scores and which tools work the best. That's a tool for us. That's not just original research for the market. That's not just for you. That's for us to know which difficulty scores we need to target so that we can rank and show better ROI for our company and generate more leads. So on one hand, the actual research that we're doing is benefiting the company. On the other hand, that research, by definition, original research has never been done before. And that's the kind of stuff that the market craves. That's the stuff that gets, like you said, sourcing for when you guys go about writing a piece. You're sourcing the original, usually, if you can, the original author of that content. Right. And what does that mean? That means that company or the author that works for that company is getting all of the credit, and they're getting massive amounts of backlinks to that page. So with good backlinks come better rankings, which comes associated with a higher domain authority. All kinds of trickle-down effects here benefit you. Not to mention, you become an authority. You are the company that created this study that is leading edge. Like, nobody else has studied this before. So you're the boss there. This was presented, just one more point on this, was presented by SurveyMonkey. So naturally, these people do I did a lot of original research, which is pulling data from sources. They set up surveys that you survey people. Obviously, you'd send out like this survey of what percentage of your marketing budget goes to video, stuff like that. And people would go and respond to it, and you create original research piece on respondent data, which is where this comes from.
Again, completely agree. Anytime a client has given us research they've done, or they've done their own survey or whatever, it's a gold mine. What we can do with that from a blog, from a, infographic perspective, even video, it helps. It completely helps. It differentiates them online, anywhere, given the fact that it's their research. And you're right. If people pick it up, it's all the more helpful. Again, it's the how. How is this done? If I'm a company right now listening to this, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm doing original research. I'm gonna do this immediately. What does that mean exactly? Am I sending a survey out and hoping to God that I get a 10 to 15% response rate? Am I buying research? Do I have to get a firm involved? I mean, what do I do? Lead me, Jeff Baker. Show me the way. How do I find the original research?
You can do it one of a few different ways. One is just like the way I did mine. I was just, like I said, I was 3 beers deep in a bar.
Yeah, you were drunk, and you looked up,
Well, not too drunk to figure out what I wanted to write about, was I? No.
So step one, bar. Got it. Okay, I'm already there.
Bar. You're already there?
I wish. In my mind.
2 p.m. It's getting 3 p.m. It's getting pretty lax over there in Boston. Anyway, well, yeah, inspiration. If something jumps out at you on your job that involves some sort of data and it could help your company, explore it. That's how most of my research came about. That got published on Moz. It's just something that piqued my interest. I'm like, I wonder what this looks like if I break down some of the data and take a look around and see if anybody's published anything similar. And if it's relevant to your audience, that's good to go. Another way to go is through SurveyMonkey. You can create these surveys that they'll send out to an audience, and you can set up demographic parameters. Like if your audience is 25 through 34 female, you can set all of those parameters. You can set up qualifying questions, and you can get responses, and you can do it up to, thousands of respondents if you want to, so that it's statistically significant. So there's that option too. And they would recommend doing something that's obviously very relevant to your industry that people would be interested in learning about. Like content marketing, we would do surveys on how much money are people, CMI does this every year. How much money are people spending on content marketing? How much should you spend on video? And when it comes down to it, with these surveys, what really piques people's interest is measuring themselves. They're pulling out their ruler and they're measuring how they measure up against, how they measure up against their competition.
No, I'm just breathing over here, man. I don't know where your mind's going about measuring oneself, but
breathing a little too heavily.
I'm fine over here. I'm fine over here.
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay,
let's just keep it above the level here, man. Come on.
You're keeping it above the fold. All right.
So, wow. Episode 8, the self-reference. We already had the sexual innuendo. Now we have the self-reference. Well done.
I don't think there was any innuendo.
We're basically a Journey song now, man. I'm proud of us. Good, go us. Okay, so I'm measuring myself, and I have my data, and I'm utilizing that for my blog or my content. Yep. It sounds like, though, and I know the answer. I'm just going to say this: you don't just jump in. You don't literally take the ruler out and say, we're going to measure stuff today. No. You actually have to plan this out. You need the right kind of group. There's a little bit of science involved with this. You can't just start measuring 10 random things and call it a survey. There's a lot more thought that goes into this. Yeah,
I can't give you any more it's going to vary based on your company and your industry. So I don't know. I wouldn't say that there's a great starting point for what kind of data to collect. You just have to feel it out based on your industry. However, the data is there. It says people want to read this. 82%, they took a poll. 82% of people would rather read a data-backed piece than an opinion piece.
Yeah. You know what? I can see that number even rising higher, given the fact of, how much we read online can be just thrown around in terms of that term of fake news. Having data to back something up probably, has that tick up a little bit more.
In terms of trustworthiness, 74% of people found data-backed or articles with data are more trustworthy than those without.
So there you go. And you know what? 100% of people in this office, and it's just me right now, likes that comment. Moving on to our final topic. And I'm glad we saved this for the last one, because of all the ones, I feel like this is the one you and I might dig into the most. It was, the term was podcasting. And basically, and this is taken verbatim, I'm assuming verbatim, unless you said this at the conference, and maybe it won't be invited, but invited back. But basically, if you're not podcasting, you're an effing moron.
Correct.
Talk about the context of that statement.
That was obviously that jumped out at me because a couple of reasons. One, the title and the evolution of the title of this was pretty funny. Like he applied to get this speaking gig 2 years ago, and he said you should be podcasting or something like that. He got turned down, and the next one was like you should really be podcasting, and he gave the same agenda for every single time he applied. The guy's name is Rob. I
was gonna say, who are we talking
Walsh.
about? You're playing the pronoun game over there. So
yeah,
what's the guy's name?
Rob Welsh from Lipson.
Okay.
Podcast hosting service. Got shot down twice, poor Rob. And the third time, he just listed it as, if you're not podcasting, you're a effing moron. And that got through. So apparently you just need to swear at your audience, and you're gonna get accepted as CMI for a speaking gig. And it was also appealing for another reason. There were obviously content marketing. There was hundreds of events on content that you could have gone to. There were 40 events on video that you could have gone to, and there were a total of 2 in audio, which was just absolutely crazy to me.
What was the other event on audio, out of curiosity?
It was actually more general about audio, and it was kind of like about it was about the theory of audio, and they talk about how the human brain responds to audio faster than visual. Proving the point of audio and how we don't really establish brand voices through audio anymore. We're very much focused on just the video aspect and the visual aspect. Okay.
All right. So this was basically a talk about what we're doing and how it sounded like how we should continue doing it. So why should everyone podcast? Give me the data here, man. What is the numbers that's going to back this up that should convince more people, hey, maybe we should do this podcast thing?
Well, the numbers are rising. I mean, there was an inflection point in about 2013. I think it was what was the name of that show?
Serial.
Everybody went nuts over Serial. Yeah, right.
Serial.
I think that was the inflection point. There was a little bit of a rise in the total number of people that listen to podcasts on a monthly basis from like 2008, 2013. Kind of a little bit of a rise, mostly flat. And then after Serial, it just jumped up. And now the numbers are 24% of all Americans regularly listen to a podcast on a monthly basis, and 40% total. 40% of all Americans have listened to a podcast, period. And that number is, I mean, it's one of those typical stock image charts up and to the left, constant rise, where it's just going up and up and up. And further, if you look at Google Trends, if you compare the two key phrases, blogging, or actually just blog, like adding the word blog to the end of any search, versus podcast, adding that to any search, podcast has surpassed blog in overall search trends. So if you look at that chart that I told you about that goes up and to the right, that's for the search term podcast, and going straight down a cliff is blog. So it started at 100 and it went down to about 30, and then it's been passed by podcast.
Which is truly interesting because even as we started getting feedback for this, you know, having especially internally at Brafton, asking people, hey, what do you think? And blah, blah, blah. You would get two different types of people. One, the person who listens to a bunch of podcasts. They can rattle off like 5, 10 of them, you know, drop of a hat. And then you get the other person that says, I don't really listen to podcasts at all. What is that exactly? Kind of thing. There was no one in the middle. Like, people either were really into it or had no idea what it was.
And the kind of like cultish early adopters, kind of.
Yeah. And the fact that it's rising, at least according to this, I mean, I get it. It's Google Trends. It's words right now. I should remind myself it's not actual podcast. This is just a word podcast getting searched. But still, it's interesting enough to say that it's suddenly this other form of content that's rising up. What does this mean? Should people jump into it? Should certain brands or companies jump into it? And if so, how? You know, how do they actually do this? You and I think, and I'm going to call it successful in the sense that we've at least had 8 episodes, and I'm not bored, so I think that's a positive thing. But how do you kind of take this and get someone else to do it? How do you even train or get? You know, it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to handle this blog, or you guys are going to handle a blog, and everyone knows how to write. But this is something else, man. I mean, talking into this thing, watching the time, planning out topics, having a personality. I mean, seriously, how does this work? Is this even possible? Does it even go beyond where we are now in terms of popularity?
Oh, dude, I think it's before you even get to that point, you need to get buy-in. I mean, the ratio of blogs to podcasts is 1,150 blogs for every podcast. That's not a blog article, an actual blog. A blog
okay, wow, all right. So a blog URL, basically.
Yeah, with the amount of popularity, it's just it's shocking to me that there's not more podcasts out there. So I think getting buy-in is probably the first step. Yeah, I mean, running a podcast isn't easy. You have to do everything that we're attempting to do.
And we're bad at it. We are bad at it, man.
And we're bad. At least it's a good thing we've got good editors. Right? I mean, there's only so much you can shine at. Whatever.
Wow. You're really going below the fold there, pal. Way below the fold.
I think, I think the first thing is getting that buy-in, and it's really easy. I mean, we talked about the numbers for one. For two, it's just common sense. Think about it. How easy is it to access a blog or a podcast rather? Like you can listen to it on your commute. You can listen to it while you're exercising. You can listen to it while you're cleaning the house and screaming at Alexa to scream at your kids for you. You can do it anytime, anywhere. Where can you read a blog post? Only when you have a screen available in front of you, which means that rules out driving, unless you're a wild animal on the road. Yeah. It rules out exercise for the most part. You can't run and read a blog post. I don't know. Can you? Have you done that, Francis?
No, I mean,
well.
I'll admit, on the treadmill, I've tried to read some emails. But that's, you know what, at some point you're like, what am I doing? And I just you put the phone down. But yeah, I think you can't do it well or at all, running and reading something.
When was the last time you were on a treadmill?
You know, a week ago. I'm getting back to the gym, get the judgmental tone. Right. See, you're living below the fold constantly on this one, man.
There's no tone.
Constantly.
Did Alexa tell you to get on the treadmill?
No, she did not, man. Your AI Alexa does not control my whole life. Alexa only controls my kids. I'm independent, man.
Yeah. Okay.
I am beyond.
Sure.
But no, you have a point. Like you can only read a blog when there is a screen in front of you. You can only interact with a blog is what I should be saying when there's a screen in front of you. But with a podcast, there's an intimacy there. You know, you have the headphones or even speakers, and there's a lot of different activities you can do while you listen to a podcast. I think you're right. I think there's a lot of potential here for it, but buy-in is absolutely the first thing. And after that, it's even like trying to find it. Like I've talked to people about podcasts, and the first thing I'll hear is like, oh, well, how do I do this thing? Like, do I find it? Where? And then they go into this big long thing about, well, it could be here, it's on Spotify, it's on, you know, Google Play, it's on a bunch of different places. But it's not intuitive for people, you know. They have to already be on Spotify to understand how that works, or they have to even understand, well, do I download this off of iTunes? What is this thing? That's part of the problem now. Like, you still have to explain to people how to even access it, where at least with a blog, it's somewhat understandable. Like, they've already got some other understanding of how that works. Yeah,
that's fair. And there is a learning curve to doing this. So we're saying go podcast, right? I think that's basically the gist of what we're talking about right now is go podcast. Well, and you asked, how do you go about doing that? Well, it's pretty simple. I mean, how much effort does it take us? I mean, yes, you have to prep a show. You have to buy a microphone, which is, you can get a decent one for $50, plugged right into your laptop. Right. Use Audacity. That's free. It doesn't take that much. It's basically the work that goes into planning and discussing the topics that you want to discuss. That's the hard part. And then you can go through, like this guy, Rob Welsh, that I saw. He has a service called Libsyn. You can upload your podcast to that, and it distributes it to all the major networks. Like, you'll get it into iTunes, you'll get it into Stitcher and Overcast and all the main outlets that people listen to podcasts. So it's really not that hard. Or you can even use, we use Anchor. It did the same thing for us. Upload it to Anchor, and then boom, you got yourself, create yourself a logo, and all of a sudden it's distributed to all the main outlets where people listen to these things. So it's really the technical portion. That's the easy part. I mean, it's the actual recording and getting content up there. That's the hard part.
I think that's part of the hard part. Like, you have to, I mean, you're raw on this thing, man. It's just you. With writing, with everything else, there's something to be said about you're able to hide behind the words or the tone, or you can use the words to your advantage. I know how to write something that's authoritative versus casual versus, ridiculous. But right now, it's just us. It's our minds coming out of our mouths into this mic. And I think if you had everything in place, the right mic, the right software, the way to distribute, everything, perfect logo, perfect intro music, which we haven't talked about. I love our intro music, and it always makes me chuckle. But if you don't have the content, if you don't have an idea of how to talk about whatever you're going to talk about or have that plan, that podcast is going to fall right on its face, And I think in many ways, that's probably the harder thing. Like, getting someone or yourself on the mic to talk, somewhat intelligently, or at least being entertaining.
Is that what we're doing?
I think we're trying to. Well, I think we're more. I think we entertain ourselves. It's jury's out on the rest of the internet, but that's what I'm getting at, man. It says I think that's the hardest thing, and you can even with us after eight episodes, I think it's more natural now, but. Listening to episode 1, I mean, you can tell, we're holding back, and I think it's hard. It's a different skill to kind of utilize.
I think we just needed to let loose the innuendos. What it all came down to.
Yeah, living below the fold constantly and just punching each other. It's probably a good place to stop right there.
It's probably a good place to stop. Why don't we give a slight preview into our next episode? I think might be a good idea.
Sure. Enlighten me. I don't even know what you're going to say right now. What's our next episode going to be about?
Well, there's statistics out there that everybody's going crazy about video, and the last couple of years, everyone keeps citing the statistic that 90% of all streaming traffic or 88% of all web traffic is going to be video. And all content marketers raise their hands and go crazy and celebrate that 90% of all consumed content is going to be people watching their product videos, right? Take a look at the top 10 visited websites and let me know what you see are the actual streaming websites that are producing video. We'll talk about that more next week.
I get what you're doing. You're giving us a box. You gave us a box, and now we can't open the box until you reveal what crappy prize is inside the box. This is my 5th birthday party. You're just recreating my 5th birthday party, and I can't wait to bitch and complain about what's inside this box.
Francis, nobody threw you a 5th birthday party.
Wow. Thanks as always to our listeners.
You rode your broken bike to Chuck E. Cheese alone.
Let me say goodbye to the people, and then you and I can argue about this offline. Thank you. Thanks as always to our listeners for listening to episode 8 of Above the Fold. As always, you had Francis and Jeff doing their best to entertain and enlighten, and maybe give you some insight into the content marketing world. As always, you can reach us at abovethefold@Brafton. It's an email address. Just feel free to give us comments, suggestions, yell at Jeff about ruining whatever he ruined in your life. It's a great place to vent. I do that every day for that email address. You can also find us on Spotify, on Google Play, and as Jeff mentioned, Anchor. That's how we distribute everything. Jeff, tell everyone about our Twitter account and how active it is.
We are at Brafton Pod, and it is updated about once a
blue moon. Once a blue moon. You didn't even use it for Content Marketing World. If I was only following that, I would have no idea you want Content Marketing World. This marks maybe the second, possibly the third week that I poured gasoline on this particular wound about our Twitter account. So
why don't you just get your Alexa to run it for you?
Maybe I will. It might even work a little bit better. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
All right, see you, everybody.